Good evening. Today is January 28th, 2021. Hope that everybody's had a good day. Today I had my Corona shot, the number one, made by Moderna, and I've been told to come back February 25th for the second one. I know everybody is concerned about this pandemic we're going through and getting enough people vaccinated. It's definitely going to take a while, but I thank God that at least we're on the right track. I want to talk today about events 35 years ago on January the 28th, 1986. The, um, the biggest news item that day was a real tragedy. The Space Shuttle Challenger disintegrated 73 seconds after launch from the United States, killing the crew of 7 astronauts. That was truly a very sad and very tragic event. I remember that day very well. Well, the year 1986, when it began, I knew it was going to be a year of major changes in my life, and that's exactly what happened. At the time, I was living in Kaufman, Texas, where I was serving as pastor of the Macedonia AME Church, and I was working as a social worker at Terrell State Hospital, a psychiatric facility 12 miles from Kaufman. I uh, had made the decision to return to school. I was approaching the age of 35, and I'd been saying ever since I'd gotten my master's degree at 25 that eventually I was going to go back and get my doctorate. And I decided at that time, rightly or wrongly, that it was now or never. And on Thanksgiving Day 1985, I mailed in my application for admission to Baylor's PhD program in religion. And it was on January the 21st of 1986 that I made a trip to Waco and met with 4 religion professors concerning my application for PhD studies. And it was just 1 week after this, I was on the job at Terrell. And I had, it was a week or two earlier that I had been in a store and I talked with a man who was employed by Terrell Iron and Metal. And someone had told me that Terrell Iron and Metal was owned by Lipsitz uh, in Waco on Elm Street, and that my old friend Reverend Dewey Pinkney was driving a truck for Lipsitz. I had not seen Dewey in nearly 10 years. In the early 1970s, I was a member of his church, St. Mary's Baptist Church in Waco. I was there from I think September of '73 until April of '75 when I joined the AME Church. And but I said I'd sure like to see Dewey again, and I got a call on the job from Dewey Pinkney and I told him he told me he was at Lipsitz, and I mean he was at Terrell Iron and Metal. I said just stay right where you are. I'll be there in a few minutes. I went and saw him, and we had a very good reunion. And it was after I got back to Terrell State Hospital that I went to the ward where I was working, and the television was on. That's when I learned about the tragedy of the explosion of the Challenger. And I know I didn't know any of the people involved, but I'm still sure 35 years later, there's family and friends that still miss them. And from what I hear, they were all outstanding individuals, the 7 astronauts. on board. Um, my meeting that day with Reverend Pinckney was followed by some phone calls. And then on April the 20th, I went to Waco, accompanied by my wife Deborah and our children and some of the members of Macedonia AME Church Kaufman. And I preached at an afternoon service at St. Mary's, and that was Sunday, April 20th. There was a lady who's passed away since then, Dr. Emmylou Harrison, who was very active in the Waco community. Uh, I remember one time I was telling a colleague, I went to a service at the Episcopal Church last night, and there was only one black woman there, and she said, "I bet I know who it was, Emma Harrison." In fact, the little saying was, "Where two or three are gathered together in Waco, that's where you find Emma Harrison." She was a very interesting lady who was very, very community minded. And but she remember St. Luke AME Church. They had a program at her church, and but she stopped at St. Mary's. I called her and told her I was going to be there, and she brought a donation to St. Mary's, and she met my family and members and friends of Macedonia, and there was one couple that come with me, and the man said that they had really liked her because he was amazed at all she had done as a nurse, as a teacher, as a school board member, and so many things in the community. And he asked her, "How old are you?" And a little stage whisper, she said, "Can you keep a secret?" And he said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, I can too." God bless her. But anyway, we had a good time that day. And then that was April 20th. Then on June the 15th, that Sunday, Reverend Pinckney brought his congregation to Kaufman and preached for me at Macedonia. And over the next, eventually, that fall, I moved. Well, I didn't move. I Most of the moves I've made over the years have been gradual. But August 31st, I resigned from Terrell State Hospital, started working part time in the library at Paul Quinn College, which was then located in Waco, and began PhD studies at Baylor. By In June of '87, by the time I had 18 graduate hours in religion and was able to teach the subject, I became chairman of the religion department at Paul Quinn College, and I was also assistant dorm director. And it was at the annual conference in August of '87 that I gave up the church at Kaufman and to devote time to my studies at Baylor and to my teaching at Paul Quinn. Well, um, our oldest daughter Erica was a senior in high school at the time, and senior year is not a good time to move. If any parent can imagine that. So we end up staying in Kaufman another year. I was still helping out the dormitory and going home when I didn't have the church anymore. I'd go home like every other weekend. And um, but in after Erica graduated, we moved to Waco August 21st of 1988, and um, so like I say, it was a gradual process. But I preached at St. Mary's and went there for some programs at different times, and we all always enjoyed my fellowship with Reverend Pinckney. Uh, During the year 1994, I remember at the end of the year I wrote an article in the Waco Citizen entitled "Farewell to Dewey, Bernie, and Tom." And Dewey Pinckney was a black Baptist minister. Bernie Shiffrin was a Jewish pharmacist, and Tom Backus was a Greek landlord. All were friends of mine. They died within a few months of each other. And I said farewell, dear friends. Reverend Pinckney died in November that year, and I attended his funeral. But we reconnected on January the 28th, 1986, um, which was 35 years ago today. And he served on the city council. Preached for, he was pastor of that church for 25 years in a poverty stricken area. He did so much, and outstanding individual. And I'm thankful I was able to reconnect with him 35 years ago today. Again, I'm very sorry for the 7 brave astronauts who died in the Challenger explosion. Good things and bad things happen every day. We know that. But I hope your January 28th of 2021 has been good. And I hope the rest of the year is good as well. God bless all who listen. Amen.